Hello my friends, DJI Osmo Pocket 3 has been on the market for more than 1.5 years. During that time it has managed to basically become the YouTube camera, and it has also made its way to various high-profile content. This time DJI really gave the people what they were asking for, and it seems that it has paid off. 1-inch sensor, larger display, integrated wireless functionality and some other clever features is indeed what people were asking for. On the other hand, it is a significant departure from Pocket 1 and 2, which prioritized pocket size above everything. In this video, I would like to sum up my thoughts about the Osmo Pocket 3 after an extended period of use. DJI Osmo Pocket 3 still follows the same basic concept as Pocket 1 and 2. It consists of a sensor with a lens mounted on a tiny gimbal, which is mounted on a handle. The thing that defines the Osmo Pocket 3 for me personally is the size in both good and bad sense. In the good sense, larger size has definitely improved the usability and the performance of the Pocket. The handling is much better, the display is a huge improvement over the 1 and 2, and the sensor enlargement is obviously very important as well. It is also pretty obvious that the Pocket 3 wants to be your primary camera. Taking Pocket 3 with me is not as much of a no-brainer as with Pocket 1 and 2. Carrying it in a jeans pocket is not possible, and it is a relatively large item even for a jacket pocket. That is generally not that much of an issue if you are using it as your main camera. I mostly carry it in my PGY Tech One Go Solo 4 leader with other essential tech stuff. If you are using it together with other devices such as your DSLM, it is not as convenient. The size to performance ratio is still great though, so DJI Osmo Pocket 3 is basically DJI Osmo Pro for me personally. It is a great device as long as you are taking full advantage of its performance. And that performance is mostly Pro as well. Pocket 3 uses 20mm full frame equivalent focal length, which is the best choice in my opinion. I have talked a lot about that in my Osmo Pocket 2 and Osmo Pocket 3 videos, but the short version is that in my opinion, it is the best compromise between ultra-wide angle immersion and all-round usability. I would also say that it is the best focal length for vlogging. DJI kind of went the A7S way by choosing a large sensor with a relatively low resolution. The reasons are likely the same as in the case of the A7S. Lower processing power requirements and frame rates. Despite the lower resolution, Osmo Pocket 3 still shoots very nice 4K video. The amount of detail is very solid, and I would say that the 1-inch sensor gives it a look that is sufficiently distinctive from action cameras and smartphones. At the same time, the video from the Osmo Pocket 3 is not that easy to distinguish from a full-frame footage in most situations, so it is an excellent B or C camera. Speaking of the video looks, the Osmo Pocket 3 is not using local tone mapping HDR, and at the current state of technology in 2025, I still think that it is the correct decision. The dynamic range was probably slightly tweaked in one of the firmware updates, and now I am very happy with it. It is a good compromise between revealing detail in shadows and providing a natural look. I would also say that the video from the Osmo Pocket 3 still looks much more natural in comparison with iPhone footage, and that has always been one of the main selling points of the Osmo Pocket 3 for me personally, and one of the reasons why the footage blends with DSLMs so well. Osmo Pocket 3 uses a lens with f2 aperture, which is great for low light, especially in combination with that 1-inch sensor. The low-light video that you can get from Pocket 3 is still the best of all at least remotely comparable devices. The downside of that f2 aperture is that the field of view can be too shallow for some situations. Another issue might be that whilst the autofocus in the Pocket 3 works great, there is quite a lot of focus breathing, and I have encountered some situations where it didn't look great. DJI has actually introduced Sony-style focus breathing compensation, which completely neutralizes the focus breathing in exchange for a relatively minor crop. That is definitely great, but you may still encounter situations where the field of view will not be sufficient, which is just a natural compromise. Of course, there is an option to use the 0.75x lens, which is included in the Creator combo, and that way you can have an ultra-wide 15mm equivalent focal length. The decrease in image quality is actually quite minor, and the footage is still rectilinear, so we are not getting the action camera fisheye look. A very interesting option is also the 1.1 time anamorphic lens from Freewell. It gives you slightly wider footage with about 18mm equivalent horizontal field of view and a bit of anamorphic properties, including those horizontal lens flares. It comes in a package with a macro lens which can be turned into a wide-angle lens and ND8, 32 and 128 filters. If you are maybe a bit bored by your Pocket 3, this is in my opinion a great refresh package. The Pocket 3 also offers a nice D-Lock M color setting, which is in effect closer to a Cine-like profile. It offers a good compromise between the dynamic range and ease of color grading, which is probably the best choice. You can also choose to shoot HEVC, which will save you a lot of storage if you have a compatible machine such as Apple Silicon Macs. The upside of that 10-megapixel sensor is that it allows the Osmo Pocket 3 to shoot 4K 120p. It is pre-slowed in camera, but it is still a great option to have. The image quality stays the same from 24 to 120p, which wasn't the case with the Pocket 2. A downside of the 10-megapixel sensor is that the option to zoom in without losing resolution is gone, and I do miss it in comparison with Pocket 2. The stills are basically 4K and they look nice, but in comparison to 48-megapixel stills from the Insta360 Ace Pro or iPhone 16 Pro, they are lagging behind. I am still fine with the 10-megapixel sensor. I understand why DJI chose it and I don't consider it to be a downside, but I keep wondering what high-resolution Pocket 3 would be like. The gimbal generally works very well, much like on Pocket 1 and 2. There were some issues with locking and unlocking the gimbal as you were turning the device on and off, but that was completely solved by the firmware update. The responsiveness of the gimbal is very predictable and you can choose from 3 rotation speed settings. Perhaps the most important thing is that the Osmo Pocket 3 will not overwhelm users with the settings. It is tuned very well out of the box and you don't need to have prior experience with gimbals to get great footage with the Osmo Pocket 3. Digital stabilization in devices such as latest iPhones or even some DSLM cameras such as the Panasonic S1 II is pretty amazing, but gimbal is still a more advanced way of stabilization. Osmo Pockets have been around for a while, so we kind of take them for granted, but having this kind of advanced capabilities in such a small and easy to use package is definitely an incredible technological advancement. The walking footage is what it is. It is a 3-axis gimbal, so the up and down movement is not stabilized, but I would say that the walking effect is a little bit visible thanks to the extra weight of the Pocket 3. The joystick actually works very well despite that it is just a on-off type of joystick. That means that the speed cannot be modulated by the joystick itself, but Pocket 3 offers comprehensive joystick settings, so it is possible to achieve very smooth panning. Also worth mentioning is that the tracking is vastly improved over the Osmo Pocket 2. It works great for both face tracking and also for tracking objects at longer distances. It is a very useful feature for one-person productions and a big advantage over other non-direct competitors. The display is a huge upgrade over the Pocket 1 and 2. It is a 2-inch OLED display with 70 nit brightness and 320 ppi resolution. I have never had any issues with the fact that it is OLED since it is bright enough, so I am still completely fine with that. What you see on the screen is not the most accurate representation of the actual output, but it is still a 2-inch screen, so I don't mind the OLEDness in this case. As I found out, actually not everybody likes the fact that it rotates. The rotating screen perhaps makes the device more fragile, but the gimbal itself is already pretty fragile, so I don't think that it matters that much. I'm personally very happy with this solution. It is a compromise, but I can't really think of any better solution. On the other hand, regarding the case, I can't say that it is my favorite part of the Osmo Pocket 3, although here again I don't really know how I would have done it better. It leaves a portion of the device exposed, which by itself wouldn't be that big of an issue. The issue is that if the gimbal doesn't lock properly for some reason, the lens will end up being completely exposed. That actually has happened to me a couple of times. On the other hand, it has a space for a wide-angle lens and one extra lens, as well as the slot for DJI Mic, which is very nice, but it makes the whole package a lot larger. Other than that, it works, but a more compact option would be very welcome. Another significant development for the Osmo Pocket 3 was the introduction of DJI Mic Mini. The size of the Mic Mini makes it ideal for the Pocket 3, and it can be very conveniently stored on the top of the case. Mic Mini can be connected to the Pocket 3 using OsmoAudio protocol, which means that you can get the same functionality as with the receiver, including 48 kHz sample rate. The battery life is generally a strength of the Pocket 3. I was able to get 142 minutes of 4K 25p, which is an excellent result. Pocket 3 also supports PD fast charging. It can be charged to 80% in 16 minutes. There is also an option to use the battery grip, which automatically recharges the internal battery, so the battery life generally shouldn't be an issue. The battery is not user replaceable, so to achieve good long-term battery health, I recommend keeping the battery between 50 and 70% when in storage, and preferably using slow charging whenever possible. One more improvement introduced by a firmware update is the option to connect the Pocket 3 to your smartphone or tablet using the USB-C cable. I find this option to be more convenient in a lot of situations. It connects automatically after the initial startup, and the transfer speed is very good. DJI MIMO app also offers pretty solid options to edit the footage. The MIMO app is generally great, probably the best together with Insta360. The delay is also very minor, so it can be effectively used as an external monitor. The accessories were a huge part of the Osmo Pocket 1 and 2 experience, but not so much with the Pocket 3. First of all, the joystick and the wireless functionality are now integrated in the main unit, and the extension port or the contacts have been removed. The Creator Combo also comes with all of the necessary stuff, and it is a very good deal considering that it includes a mic to transmitter. To sum up, it is pretty obvious that the Osmo Pocket 3 is an incredibly successful device. DJI indeed gave the people what they were asking for, and it has paid off. It seems that it is exactly the right device for the needs of modern content creators. The combination of that 1-inch sensor and gimbal makes it a very capable device in terms of both image quality and stabilization or smoothness of the movements. The 4K video out of the Pocket 3 looks great, and it is pretty difficult to distinguish it from full-frame footage in a lot of situations. The gimbal is easy to use, and it generally gives the footage a very professional look in terms of the movement. The audio quality is also an important part of the whole package, and the Pocket 3 offers great options in that area as well. If I review it as a primary camera for content creators, there is very little that I can complain about. The bright aperture of the lens makes it a great low-light camera, but the field of view may be too shallow for some situations. There is also the up and down movement when walking, so I think that a possible point of improvement might be a combination of gimbal and electronic stabilization. The price for all of those capabilities is also the fact that the Pocket 3 is not as small as Pocket 1 and 2. I don't really mind that because the Pocket 2 is still available and it is a very capable device, and I actually still use it a lot. Overall, I can just say congratulations to DJI, listening to the customers was indeed a very good choice. So that's it for this video, thank you for watching, I hope that you liked this video and that you found it to be useful. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future content. I appreciate your feedback in form of thumbs up or thumbs down. If you would like to ask anything or share opinion, please do so in the comment section, and see you next time.